Welcome to Paranormal Heart Podcast with host Kat Ward. Welcome to Paranormal Heart Podcast, Paranormal Talk with Heart and Soul. Tonight's segment is streaming live on United Public Radio Network, 107.7 New Orleans, 105.3 the Gulf Coast, YouTube, Spotify, and any place you find your favorite podcast. So, my dear haunted hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. For segment 97, I am joined by Dacre Stoker. Dacre is a Canadian-American writer, teacher, and former modern pentathlete and coach. He's also an international speaker and researcher, and is also the great-grandnephew of Bram Stoker. Pretty sure you know who Bram Stoker is. So Dacre is dedicated to preserving Bram Stoker's legacy while exploring the true history and folklore that inspired the world's most famous vampire. And he has also co-authored several books, including Dracula the Un-Dead and Dracul, I think that's how it's pronounced, and is sought-after guest at literary, paranormal, and horror events around the world. So tonight, Dacre will be sharing a fascinating discussion on the Stoker legacy, Dracula, and the rich history behind one of the world's most iconic vampire tales that continues to inspire generations. Welcome, Dacre Stoker.
Hey, Kat. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is a great honor for me.
Well, thank you. I just love the opportunities to spread the word and help promote Bram's legacy. It's my thing, and I enjoy doing it.
And it's cool that you're Canadian.
Well, that is a nice connection. You know,
I know.
I did move down to here to the U.S. I'm in South Carolina, sweltering in the heat.
Yeah.
But it's nice to, maintain the maple leaf.
Yes, I'm glad you do. So I know you've been asked this countless times, so please forgive me for asking again. So when did you become aware and interested in your great-granduncle Bram? And do you remember what you were thinking at that time?
Well, absolutely. So I grew up in Montreal, and about the age of 12 or 13, happened to be Halloween time, and people come trick-or-treating. Even in Canada, they take the snowshoes off,
Yes.
even in October, and we go trick-or-treating. And people would joke. They'd come to the door and go, "Oh, the Stoker household, what are you guys going to do? You're going to take our blood or give us candy?" And oh, that's very funny. And I finally said, "Dad, what are they talking about?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, let me tell you, son." So he brought me to our library and pulled out a book, and it was actually a first edition of Dracula that had been passed on down to him. He opened it up, Kat, and it was inscribed, "To my dearest mother, Bram, May 18th, 1897, which is 8 days before the book was actually published." I didn't know that at the time. And I said, I didn't even know what the novel Dracula was at 12 or 13. And he explained, he's a famous author. And he said that Bram's youngest brother, George, had a son. That son, Tom, moved to Canada from England after World War I and emigrated there, lived there, and helped start the Montreal Stock Exchange. And that's my grandfather. Wow. And so that's how the Irish traveled to many places. Bram moved to London to work in the theater. And then that's how the rest of them also, some stayed in Ireland, but most of them moved to London to look for better jobs. And then one of them decided to come to Montreal. The other one, actually, his other brother, Richard, moved to Victoria, British Columbia. So he joked and called them the Irish bookends. Canada. Yeah. So, and that's actually who sent the book to my dad. So Richard was actually given the book by his mom when he was moving to Canada. It's probably like the mom said, "Here, you better take some of the family stories with you." Mm-hmm. And then at a certain point, either when he passed, his wife sent it on to Montreal, and then it became our duty, along with a couple other of the books. But now I have them, and I preserve them, and I make them available on loan to different museums or libraries when there's big Dracula exhibits. So I've had some fun stories traveling around the world with the book in a special case in my backpack, traveling to Milan, Italy, Taiwan, Helsinki, Finland, all these cool places because other people obviously appreciate having sort of an heirloom like that on display for a big event.
That's amazing. I mean, when you have it at your place, do you have it in a special case so the humidity and stuff doesn't get to the book?
No, you're absolutely right. So there's two things you got to do with a book like that, other than all the ones that are behind me. These are reproductions and things, but a book that's almost 130 years old, you can't leave it standing like that. So it needs to be in a case, sort of a cutout thing, so it doesn't shift or wobble, and the glue gets pressure from standing up. But also you said it, humidity and temperature. Yep. Humidity is one of the worst things for a book. So I've actually got a room with my rare books in a case. They're all in certain cases, but that has a dehumidifier right next to it. And also, those little kind of sacks of silica that you put in there just to make sure, because I am in South Carolina and sometimes it gets very humid.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like our crown jewels in the family, this book collection, to make sure that if the color of the little meter turns a color, I got to switch the sack and go on. We take it pretty seriously.
Do you ever take it out of the case, like with the gloves and everything, or do you just admire it in the case?
No, when I have special friends come over, they heard about it, they want to see it. But what I did do was I bought an edition, not signed, obviously that's way expensive, but I did buy a first edition, 6th printing, so that I could show it to people and bring it to events without having to take out the signed one. And then this one is actually a one that a buddy of mine who actually created in a Kickstarter actual reproduction of mine. So he actually used stage and theater techniques to kind of make the pages look old. You can kind of see the edges all that. So this is an actual reproduction of that first edition. And you can see how the writing is like really small. It is the exact same dimensions as the family first edition passed on down.
Wow.
It took a long time to do because we started the thing during COVID, and the companies that were producing this type of linen paper that was exactly the same as the 1890s went out of business, shut down. Everything was shut down, and so it took a while for it to revive, and we're still actually fulfilling the orders as we now have fulfillment coming in from these kind of micro boutique type publishers.
I have to ask, because I've always loved books. I've always loved bookstores, especially if they have a cat in it. You have to have a cat in a bookstore.
Absolutely.
And the smell of the book. I mean, that book must have a wonderful smell to it. Well, wonderful, I guess, if you like the smell of old books, but
it is. And the guy I was working with, Vic, he said, I have tried like heck to recreate old musty book smell with some sort of perfume or something, and he's tried and he hasn't been able to get it.
Keep trying.
I know, because all I have to do is open up my little cabinet, and I've now got probably 50 rare books. Because the other crazy thing I've done, Kat, is I'm on this quest to purchase first editions of exactly the same books that Bram Stoker used for his research.
Yep.
And the guy listed them all in his notes. So I know what they are.
Yep.
It's just when they become available at these rare book things. So if I need my fix of that smell you're talking about, I just open up, take it. And it is, I know there's no cat in there, but there's a cat in the house, but not in, but it has that wonderful aroma of old book. And it's so hard to describe to anybody else. It's not decaying plant matter, which is something else. But it does. It has that smell that there's some mysteries creeping around between the pages that are really old, and nothing in this world kind of really incites the creativity and, really to me, the excitement of what are these books all about? Who wrote them? What books were used to research them? What stories do they tell? You get me going, I'll go all day.
You're smelling history.
Yeah.
There used to be, so when we lived in New Brunswick, there was a secondhand bookstore in Fredericton. And first time I walked in, this cat comes tearing to the front to say hello. And I'm like, oh, aren't you, hello, little fuzzy butt, and the clerk is just like looking at me like I had two heads. I'm like, what's going on? It's just, that cat hates everyone. And I'm like, oh, okay. And every time we would go there, the cat would follow me, the tails up, let me scratch. It was I just love bookstores.
Did you walk around with like "My name is Cat" on a little welcome label, and so the cat knew?
I should have.
Exactly.
Just instinctively knew.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it wasn't it in Harry Potter, some of those really cool scenes with the real old bookstores too?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I try to seek them. I did actually, God, you're bringing back thoughts. I did a show called Legend Hunter on TV. I think it was History Channel, and they had me meet a microbiologist by the name of Pat Spain, who became a friend in an old bookstore in Boston. Because what Pat was doing was he would find old legends in these old bookstores. And he would analyze them and figure out, was there any scientific background that can be proven that was the basis for this story or this legend? And what he had me on the show for is, how a lot of vampire lore in the world was created because of mythologies of the unknown spreading of disease and spreading of contagious disease. In New England, there was an outbreak of tuberculosis in the late 1800s. There was an article written in the New York World newspaper that Bram Stoker, when he was in New York with the Lyceum Theater and the famous actor he was the manager for, Henry Irving, he cut out that article and stuck it in his notebook. So, two things. He traveled with his Dracula notebook during the years of 1890 to 1896 when he was still writing the novel. In his free time, he would look for newspaper articles and ideas. He found that article, and it mentioned this contagious disease of tuberculosis and so on. So Pat was looking at, because being the microbiologist, he's wondering, what was it that forced the people or caused the people to come up with the suspected remedy, which was take the suspected vampire out of the grave, go and take out the heart, and go to crossroads, make a fire, burn the heart, and make these ashes out of the burnt heart, and put it into hot water, make sort of a soup or a tea out of it, and feed that to the other members of the family who were suspected of being victims of the vampire. Now, all of us on this show here tonight totally understand that this was tuberculosis germs floating around that was very contagious, and the family members would get it. Nothing to do with vampirism, but for some reason, Kat, this anti-vampire elixir must have worked, because this remedy was going on for hundreds of years over in Eastern Europe, and these people brought it back to New England. So what Pat was looking at was, hey, Dacre, where did this thing come from that Bram Stoker utilized in his novel? And wondering if there was any scientific basis for some of that infected heart burned, but to the point where it's turned into some sort of almost like a vaccine, that when you get a small amount of COVID or measles, your body then manages it and creates the antibody. So that's why I was in a cool old bookstore in Boston with Pat Spain, looking at, figuring out the microbiology of this old myth.
Yeah.
Who would have figured?
When I first heard about that, sadly enough, my paternal grandmother passed away when my father was 16 of TB. She was in the hospital for the longest time. So I jokingly say, maybe she was a vampire. No.
Never know.
Yeah. Well, I've never met her, so.
Yet.
Yet. So your quest for information has led you to so many amazing places: museum, libraries, university, private collections around the world. Can you tell us what that's like for you, having access to all of this information? And do you recall the first place you went to?
So, the first thing is, I'm awful lucky with the surname Stoker. That opens doors. But
I can imagine.
It didn't start as easily as that at the beginning, because there is a small group of scholars, mostly in England, and now it's kind of expanded into the US and Canada, Dr. Elizabeth Miller being one in Canada. She's passed away, but she was a maritimer, and then she moved to University of Toronto. But there was, I would say, probably this enclave of 20 of them, and they were pretty protective of what they knew about Bram Stoker at the time, and they were open to having me come and start ask questions. But until you publish something with academic scrutiny, it's hard really to get on the inside.
Yeah.
So I was polite. I went to these different conferences. I listened a lot. I asked a lot of questions, but I was on a quest to understand Bram. So they directed me, and some took me under their wing and directed me to different biographies. And Elizabeth Miller, Robert Eighteen-Bisang, Sir Christopher Frayling, Paul Murray, different biographers, different academics would say, here, learn this. It's almost like I'm cutting my teeth. If you're serious about this, you got to do all this first. So this was all sort of public stuff, but I just didn't know where to start, which were the 4 or 5 biographies that were considered to be credible or not. And then once I did that and I started showing up and talking about it, giving a family perspective, my cousins in England, Bram's direct descendants, they had some stuff, and they had given some, sold some to different libraries. So that's where I started going, was to Trinity College, Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia, Trinity course in Dublin. And that sort of then started, wow, oh, cool. This is stuff actually written by Bram. These are his actual notes. What was he thinking? And thank goodness some were transcribed, because spoiler alert, his handwriting is terrible. But the Rosenbach Museum has Bram Stoker's 124 pages of Dracula notes. Luckily, Elizabeth Miller and Robert Eighteen-Bisang, 2 Canadians, both have passed away, have published them from McFarland. So they're available to look at. And that's the first wow factor, Kat, was when I could really see how they deciphered and made me understand Bram's writing process. So since then, I've used that info to go deeper myself and figure out certain chapters that were cut out of the book, certain ideas that didn't make it into the final book, when I cross-referenced that to the Dracula typescript that Paul Allen owns. So every little thing, every place I went to, that John Moore in Dublin had a great collection. It's now owned by Emory University in Atlanta, just down the road from me. They're all like little pieces of a puzzle.
Yeah.
So individually, they helped me. But when I found one and I could cross references to one of the other pieces, it became greater than 2 pieces. It became, oh, now this tells a story. And now I know more about this biography, because now I've got 2 pieces of information that refute what this person said or confirms what this person said. So I slowly, over about 5 or 6 years, would have more of my own source material from Bram to then draw on. So then when I showed up at a conference, I would have a little more clout, because I could present a paper or present my PowerPoint presentation, or I had theories to bounce off people. Now they're respecting me because I'm backing up some of my theories with research. And that, I think, put me on the map and gave me the street cred to be able to work with 2 different co-authors writing fictional works, but had historic background. Because, anybody can go out, and I don't say that, that's disrespectful. Not anybody can go out and write a book. It's not easy. But luckily, I had Ian Holt and Alexander Gallant help with the Dracula the Un-Dead, 2 guys from Ontario. And we did a lot of research. Ian had a film background. Alex had a historical researching background. And if I had just walked in, then people would say, well, what the heck are you? What have you done to earn this right to write a sequel to Dracula? Well, I've done this. Okay, now I get, they get it. Yeah. So that comes out. Yes, of course, you're now subject to all kinds of reviews, positive and negative, but that puts you out there where you have to be when you're facing the public with stories. And that leads to other stuff, like during this process of writing The Un-Dead with Ian and Alex, I actually found Bram's journal that he kept as a university student. It was in my cousin's attic in the Isle of Wight.
Wow.
So as I said, one little piece of the puzzle leads to another. So I bring that, I get my cousins to take photographs. I present it to Elizabeth Miller, who's now at this point a very good friend, and she's helped decipher the Dracula notes. She helps decipher 311 entries of young Bram Stoker. And that gives us great insight into how he is wired as a person, which then moved me on to write Dracul with J.D. Barker, a story of Bram's youth and his early life as a young man, working, and fictionalized why he was able to write Dracula as a warning to the world that vampires are real. So, all those things would not have necessarily been possible had I not had the confidence and the understanding of Bram himself, his correspondence to his sisters, his mothers, and how he felt relationships flows. That helped me in that fictional world, as well as just being now a credible source of the spokesman for the family.
So the Stoker family name opens doors, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to be well known. You've actually got to do some work now, and now people know that you're legit. And
well, even in a bigger way, and I've said this to a couple of people, it opens the doors to put your foot in that door, but it then brings extremely high expectation that when you put your foot in the door, you darn well better have something good to say, because those expectations are high.
Yep.
And if you're just, as they say, are you a pretender or a contender?
Yeah. I find it's really interesting too. So it looks like you and Bram have something in common other than writing, both authors, both athletes. I mean, Bram played rugby, football, track and field, and you're a pentathlete. I mean, anybody else in the family that are athletes too? I know it's off the Dracula topic, but I just found that was really interesting.
Well, it is like, my dad was a horseman. He played golf.
Oh, okay.
He played rackets. I think everybody has a little bit of sports. I know that Bram's older brother Thornley was a serious rugby player as well as being a famous doctor. He was the doctor that helped him with all the medical stuff in Dracula.
Yeah.
But let's step back a little bit, because Bram's athletics really helped him come out of his shell. So from 0 to 7 years old, he was a sickly child, infirmed. We're not exactly sure how infirmed. I don't think he was just like lying in horizontal in bed for 7 years. He was upright, but not really normally walking around or getting outside much. And nobody really knows for sure what the illness was. I've taken a stab at what I call gathering circumstantial evidence that there is a lot of asthma in the family, and there's a lot of allergies in the family still to this day.
Okay.
These things are hereditary. Growing up outside of Dublin, Ireland in the mid 1800s, it was a damp environment. They didn't have dehumidifiers.
Yeah.
They basically slept on beds. Usually the sheets were linen. There was straw in the beds. There was feathers in the pillows and in the beds as well. So if you have respiratory allergies and asthma, it's not going away from you 24/7. And one of his other brothers was asthmatic as well and had allergies. So when Bram moved inland from Dublin Harbor, from Clontarf, just a couple miles inland, he started getting better, a drier environment.
Yeah.
And I am told by the family that he started walking once at the age of 7. He started walking for exercise. Well, he started walking with gusto and doing a lot of walking and a lot of sort of imagining, because this is what I saw in his journal, that he was looking at the ships in the harbor and he was doing these long walks. Well, he got to be so fit that he overcame the allergies and the asthma.
Wow.
They didn't have medicine for that stuff. And he became a champion race walker at Trinity College at the age of 17.
Wow.
So 10 years after he got out of bed, he's playing rugby, champion race walker. He was the all-round athletics champion at Trinity College. He was also rowing. Now, all those sports I just mentioned require serious amount of muscular strength, cardiovascular strength. So it wasn't something like, meningitis or some other debilitating illness that would have caused his body and his cardiovascular system to be scarred and not function well and be a crippled young gun. He became very strong and robust. So that's why we think it's something that you grow out of with the right amount of exercise. But it did one other thing, because imagine the psyche. If anyone's listening, you think of young men or women who are isolated, not a normal socialization process. This is the teacher in me talking now. And then at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, you start meeting the world, which he did at the school where he went to and was tutored. You're a little awkward as you go through these growth spurts, which he did because he grew to be 6'2" pretty quickly. And he found his place at Trinity College, which was a very intellectual school, but in the sports domain, he became, a stud, which then gave him great confidence, which then kind of bled over into the Historical Society. He became the head of the Philosophical Society, debating, drama, and so on.
Really came out of a shell.
That's it. It's the confidence building of what sports can lead to you or give to you if you're successful and you do well. And we've got the family. My cousins have the trophies to kind of prove it. And I think I put that together with what I saw in his journal that he kept during that time. He started, getting into writing loves poetry. So he had girlfriends and he had men friends in the rugby club. So he really became, a big man on campus, and, then ended up with a master's degree in mathematics and went off to work as a civil servant in the British government at Dublin Castle before he ended up going into the theater and being a manager for the most famous actor of the time. So that sport springboarded him on in life. In sort of a similar way I did. I was in university, but I'd seen this sport of modern pentathlon at the 76 Olympics in Montreal, where I was living and where my dad was running the drug testing, if you can believe it. The horses at the 76 Olympics. And I was enamored with this sport of running, shooting, swimming, fencing, and riding, because I could already ride as well as them. I was a decent runner, couldn't swim, competitively. So, over the next 4 years, I learned how to do all this stuff and made the Canadian junior team, the senior team. And luckily, the people at St. Lawrence University in upstate New York allowed me to swim on the swim team. And I ended up to be pretty darn good after 4 years. And I made the Canadian team in 1980, but that was the boycott year because of the games in Moscow. The Americans didn't want to go, so they led a worldwide boycott to not go to Moscow because the Russians had invaded Afghanistan at the time.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Some of us haven't forgotten, but I went on with my life, and I graduated, and I went to Appleby College in Oakville, where I ended up becoming a teacher and athletic director, and I started coaching modern pentathlon because I just didn't have the time to train.
Yeah.
And 8 years later, I take the men's team to the Olympic Games in Seoul, and we ended up having our best finish ever. We came 11th out of 22 teams.
Well done.
That was pretty good for us against all these major subsidized countries in the world in these sports at the time. It wasn't professional, so most of the countries that we competed against had sport armies or sport police forces to do something like modern pentathlon, which was sort of military type thing anyway.
Interesting. So Bram, he wrote quite a few novels and short stories. His best known one is, of course, Dracula, as everyone knows. But at the time, his bestseller was about his friend and former boss, Sir Henry Irving, titled Personal Reminiscence of Henry Irving. What do you imagine Bram and Sir Henry would say today regarding Dracula, or have you even thought of anything like that?
Oh, so that's a bit of a loaded question because, again, bits and pieces of information.
Yeah.
So when Bram wrote Personal Reminiscence, it was actually after Dracula and was after Irving died. But Irving did know that Dracula was published, and Irving did witness a staged reading of Dracula in the Lyceum Theater.
Oh.
So what that means is Bram, having a legal background from his early days in Dublin Castle, cut and pasted 2 first editions of Dracula. And I mean cut and paste, I really mean cut and paste.
Yeah.
Okay. Stuck it on, couple hundred pages, and then wrote in directions, had 11 friends of his who worked at the Lyceum sit on the stage and pass the script, and they read it over 6 hours.
Wow.
And it was not supposed to be for entertainment. It was a legal formality to read the story on a stage with at least 2 people in the audience and a playbill, so that they could then deliver the script to the Lord Chamberlain's office to say it's been performed once with an audience and a playbill, and therefore we fulfill the requirements to protect the dramatic rights of the book. So Irving apparently walked through the theater when this was going on, hung around for a few moments and said, "Dreadful," and walked away.
No.
So it's a great source of debate. Did he actually mean it was full of dread, or it was horrible, it sucked?
Yeah.
Or was it just so bloody long and they're just reading it, they're not acting? And Irving really stuck his nose up at sort of people just sort of, going through the motions. But that's all it was. Bram knew the rules. And funnily enough, Kat, that process that he went through ended up with Bram receiving a certificate from the Lord Chamberlain's office. 3 years ago, I got an email, once my name has been out there, that, I'm the sort of the guy in the family, from the Royal London Archives saying, "You might be interested. We found this in the archives." It was that certificate.
No. Wow.
The certificate literally in Bram's handwriting, that he had to fill it out. What was it? Stage reading of Dracula or the Undead, time, place, and then Bram's signature, and then the signature of Lord Chamberlain. And what that meant was it was part of the inheritance of Bram's widow, Florence, when Bram died in 1912, and gave her a piece of paper that she was then able to turn into the stage play version with Hamilton Dean and in Derby, England, and then with John Balderston to come to America. That piece of paper probably brought Florence, 20 grand. Then, though, in 1931, that same piece of paper, along with a certificate of the staged rights that Dean and Balderston and Florence worked on together, they sold those stage rights to Universal Pictures for the 1931 Bela Lugosi film Dracula. She got 40 grand for that.
Wow.
So in this day, in today's amount of money, that's probably $500,000. So she, and because of Bram's detail-oriented legalities and doing that stage reading, even though Irving didn't like it. So that's kind of long-winded to what do we think Irving would have thought today? Well, he probably would be kicking himself because Uncle Bram had thought Irving would make the perfect Count Dracula.
Oh.
Because he played roles like Mephistopheles in Faust, the devil's assistant, Merchant of Venice, Shylock. He played these kind of, tall, domineering kind of sinister roles. And he did. Scholars kind of think that he stuck his nose up. How could my manager have written something that's beneath me?
Yeah.
Bram was a heck of a good theater manager. He could balance the budget and do all the right stuff, but writing a book, turning into a play, not so much. So I think Stoker would have said, "Told you so," or "You should have listened to me." And Irving would have gone, "God darn it, should have listened."
Kind of makes me think of years ago when Star Wars first came out. There were the two movie critics, Siskel and Ebert, and they gave them 2 thumbs down for Star Wars.
I've heard stories similar to that. And you may know your answer, or some of your listeners may, that some actors were offered, a certain salary or a percentage of the gate, of the ticket sales. And some of them just took the money because they thought it's going nowhere. And somebody even was offered either some salary or percentage of the, the toys, the ephemera. And they said, forget it. This thing's not going anywhere. And if they had taken that little percentage, it would have been, 100 times more than the salary they took.
Yeah.
But you got to think, at the time, these are probably starving actors and actresses that, just, hey, I got to have the sure thing. You never know.
Yeah, that's funny. So why do you think, so you mentioned that Bram thought that Irving would have been the perfect Dracula. It just came to me, and I'm trying to word it better.
What was it about him that made him think that?
Yeah, about him, but what made him go with
Vlad?
Vlad, yeah, as the main character.
Okay, so this again is another puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So with all the analysis I've done of Uncle Bram, one of his tendencies was to make people and places and stories have a realistic feel to it, even though it was mystery or supernatural. Mm-hmm. So that was his little hook, not pure fantasy, but stuff that makes people like you and me and your listeners think, oh God, that is so weird. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's true, or that's taking place in downtown Oakville, or boy, I know that place. Mm. I wonder if that's real. So what Bram did, particularly with Count Dracula and Bran Castle, two of the places that to this day, people and places people kind of are fixated on. So he merged, and I get this from looking at his notes and looking at the typescript. He merged elements of Henry Irving, the person, a very dominating, egotistical, tall guy, mm-hmm. with Henry Irving on stage playing the role of Mephistopheles, the assistant to the devil, with a real person that he found in two books. The two books, one in the Whitby Library, mm-hmm. called The Account of Principalities of Wallachia, Moldavia by William Wilkinson, and one in the London Library by James Samuelson called Transylvania, Its Products and Its People. They both listed Dracula as being a devil. One went into more detail, Vlad Dracula, who did all this impaling and all these atrocities. The other simply saying Dracula in the Wallachian language means devil and is used as someone's surname who displays courage, cunning, or bravery. And in the novel, Bram used those words 3 times when Van Helsing explaining who this Dracula was. Mm-hmm. So the devil now enters into the play here. We haven't talked about the occult yet on your show, but this was a big deal at the time. Okay, mm-hmm. So you've got to understand, we take just a little sideways step, but don't let me get off the topic of how Vlad and the devil and Mephistopheles and Irving all came together. But to understand this fully, Bram wrote the book between 1890 and 1897. Mm-hmm. Charles Darwin had just published The Origin of the Species, completely threw up evolution versus creation theory, right? Mm-hmm. Religion had stopped in those years, 1859, being the sole gatekeeper to life and death. Mm-hmm. And it was like Sunday, you'd be told how you have to live so you die properly and have a good afterlife. Well, that all changed when Darwin came up with his evolution theory. So now heavy thinkers would have to sneak into private clubs, Freemasonry, mm-hmm. Order of the Golden Dawn, Hellfire Club. They'd be thinking and discussing seance, tarot cards, where's the spirit going, spiritualism, Arthur Conan Doyle, Houdini, all these folks emerged. So this was a time of great expansion, not just of industry, but thinking beyond the realm of what's normal, of what has been shoved down our throat by modern religion. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just what was going on, right? Mm-hmm. So Bram was reading books, and I've seen the books, where a vicar of the Church of England is looking into the supernatural and the other world. And he's reading books about vampires and devil worshippers and all this. So it's like, wait a sec, a vicar of Church of England's writing a book about the devil. Well, it turns out that his flock, he's got to understand the playbook of the opposition, so to speak, so he can better understand. which is a good thing to understand rather than just shun away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Bram needed to have his major antagonist not just a mythical creature, but a creature that resonates as being real. So hence Vlad the Impaler, but because he found a guy with a real history from the late 1400s that was known as a devil, that's perfect. It brings everything together. And the fact that Irving played Mephistopheles, the assistant of the devil, on stage, this is like the perfect package. Now, to give you one of the pieces of my little research, when I come up with theories like this, not only do I find the name devil in 2 of the books that Bram listed for his research, but when J.D. Barker and I went out to Seattle, Washington, and got permission to look at the Dracula typescript. Now, the typescript is a handwritten manuscript that Bram had handed over to a typing service and typed the whole book up, ready to be printed. However, then it progressed to the editor. So Bram sits down with the editor, and the editor goes through it and says, well, we can't have that in there. Or what about this instead? We can't have this. Oh, it's too long. So a lot of weird things happen to the typescript. And maybe on another show, we'll talk about everything.
Yeah.
But the one we found started on page 102. So 101 pages gone. I now have a pretty good idea what they are. But more importantly, there was one part of the story. And if you're listening, about 3/4 of the way through the story, when Mina, so Lucy is now dead, the band of heroes figured out there's a vampire about, they're closing in on Count Dracula. They're in the asylum, but Dracula gained entry into Dr. Seward's asylum because he tricked Renfield into inviting him in. Then he beat up Renfield, who's now lying on the floor with the brain hemorrhage, and the good guys have to do brain trephination surgery on him, which leaves Mina vulnerable, who's in a room, and Count Dracula goes into the room and slits his chest and forces Mina to drink his blood. At that stage, the band of heroes figure out what's going on, and they force entry into that room, and they see Dracula on the bed, the blood coming down the chest, and Mina lying. It's depicted very well in the 92 Coppola film. Other films do a good job with it too. But that exact scene in the book had a sentence crossed out that the normal person who's read Dracula wouldn't know, because Bram had written in Jonathan Harker's journal, the Count cowered from Marguerite's lifted cross as Mephistopheles in the play.
Oh.
So in the play, Mephistopheles cowers from the crucifix in exactly the same way when Van Helsing is holding the cross to repel him away from Mina, that he cowered. That was crossed out. And the only reason I think it was, Kat, was because the editor may have said, well, what happens if people have not seen the play Faust and don't know who Mephistopheles is? And that's not that uncommon, because going to plays in those days was not cheap. So some things like that, Shakespeare references got cut out of the typescript because some people wouldn't know what it was.
Okay.
But that proves to me that Bram was thinking, when he was writing the story, that Count Dracula appeared like Mephistopheles, the assistant to the devil. So those are my 3 pieces of info to make a merged character, so that brings Henry Irving in with Vlad the Impaler's history, his backstory, and the occult icon himself, the devil.
Is there any indication that Bram might have had, because he was really into the occult, any indication that he might have had abilities himself, like the second sight?
Oh boy, you're on it tonight. Yes. No, that's one of those things that's very hard to prove, honestly. But I'll tell you indications. And again, it's like everything else I've been telling you, it's puzzles. So a researcher, I think she's actually from Oklahoma, was led to Leeds University in England and found like 20 letters Bram had written over the course of his life, all to known occultists, specialists in the occult. Now, just to get this right, this doesn't mean he's like talking about people slitting the throat of a black cat on a Sunday. It's people thinking of the other world, right? Spiritualism and so on. So he's got an interest before Dracula and after Dracula, not just doing research for Dracula, because some of his other stories do heavily go into the ghostly world and mysticism and so on. So that's number one. Number two, he actually wrote the first two chapters actually, of my second favorite book that he wrote called The Mystery of the Sea. And it's a story that takes place in Cruden Bay, Scotland, where Bram stayed for a while. And it was called The Seer. It was about a lady that had second sight. So if you guys want a freebie, go to bramstoker.org. It's a free website of all Bram Stoker's public domain works. You can see his short stories. You can see his books. Go check out The Seer, and you can read about Gormala. And I've been going to Cruden Bay, Scotland, and I've got to know a great guy, a researcher named Mike Shepard, who has told me things like, "Oh yeah, Gormala is part of our history. We know about this old lady walking around and scaring people and so on." So it's like, God, he was on to something, right? And then one more piece, Professor John Edgar Browning, another friend of mine, also in the Puzzle Network, he found the one book that Bram Stoker did a review on. And it was from a newspaper in New Zealand and was all about second sight in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. So Bram spent 11 summers in Scotland for his holidays at Cruden Bay, and he got very into the sort of the Scottish culture and the whole concept of second sight. And the last little piece is I found an article written by a guy, Norval Scrimmanger, in a Dundee, Scotland newspaper that says he met Bram Stoker and he's waited about 30 years to write about it, but he met him at a reception for Henry Irving, and Stoker was there, and he found Bram Stoker much more interesting, who sat by the fireplace with his cigar and his brandy and told stories about his own experiences with second sight. Watching two people talk about and explain second sight, and Bram Stoker reviewed that book as if it was totally legit, like he wasn't, like, oh, it's all malarkey,
rubbish. Yeah.
No, it's true. So he had a great respect for it, Kat. Do I believe he believed it? I think he did. I think there was some Irish mysticism in him from the get-go, and that he was very sensitive to the world as we see it and as we don't see it around us.
Yep. Nice.
Which makes me feel good, because a guy like that is the type of person I want to read. It's not just all here, all now, got to have proof. It could be. And if it's not, what could it be? And let's think of this, or here's the possibility. And to me, that makes life much more interesting.
Yeah, agreed. Can you talk about the influence Irish folklore and superstition had on Bram Stoker writing Dracula, and how Scottish writer Emily Gerard helped shape the novel? If I'm not mistaken, Emily introduced him to terms like Nosferatu and Strigoi. I think she had I think that's what she helped introduce. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. So the first one is, there is no question that a young boy growing up, especially bedridden, who's got to be entertained by his mom and his nanny, is going to get a boatload of Irish folklore. They're a country of storytellers. That's what they did. There was no TV, radio. It's the stories, but they served a purpose. These are cautionary tales to train people on how to behave, how to act, and so on. So that's a no-brainer, and they're wonderful. They're deep. They're rich. But Bram never had to write anything in his notebook about attack or dare do. They were there. The banshees, polkas, all these different things. Okay. But because I want to make sure I have enough time for Emily Gerard, who is Scottish, but I found now some really cool stuff about this very brave, adventurous lady. And it was brought to Bram's attention by Oscar Wilde's mother. Lady Jane Wilde wrote a book about ancient Irish folklore and superstition that was in Bram's personal library. Mm-hmm. And I've seen the segment of it that says that Irish folklore and superstition is identical to that of Transylvania, especially when it comes to werewolves, witches, and vampires. Mm-hmm. So that's what got his attention to move then towards Emily Gerard, who wrote an article called Transylvanian Superstitions in the same magazine that Bram wrote an article in, and it was called 19th Century. It was the name of the magazine, and she wrote all about Transylvanian superstitions. She then expanded it because she so got into it with a whole book called Land Beyond the Forest. Land Beyond the Forest is one of the 26 books in the London Library that Bram listed in the back of his notes. So here's her story. Very interesting family. And because I've been on this quest, my friends from Experience Transylvania Tour Company have helped me find the house that Emily Gerard lived in Airdrie, outside of Glasgow. Well, there's a wonderful lady named Ellie Zegan and her husband and her children that live there and have a glamping outfit and have a really cool farm there. And Ellie is now caught the bug like I have. She's an actor and she runs a theater. She has now researched and started to do a one-person show about Emily Gerard and her life and how she moved to Vienna with her family, married a man in the Austrian-Hungarian cavalry, and was stationed in northern Transylvania in the city of Sibiu. And from there, when he was out doing his military things, she would be bored. She'd take her horse, her servant, and her dog and wander through the countryside. And she used to interview people. Now, Kat, imagine this in 1882, 83, 84. That's a pretty bold thing for a young lady to do, and go to places and ask people about vampire, Nosferatu, Strigoi, verboten type things that were very touchy in a country that had all kinds of different religions and customs and superstitions because it's where it's located, and Germans and Austrian Hungarians as well as Ottomans, and so it's a real melting pot. So they had a very interesting sort of culture. And she uncovered this stuff of what their real beliefs were, wrote it in the book, and Bram copied it all down in his notes. So that lady gets the credit, especially now that Ellie Zegan has started doing the play of hers. I started doing lectures just on her, and the BBC Scotland has started to do a documentary on her. Deserves a heck of a lot of credit for basically providing Bram Stoker on a platter everything he needed to know. So why he set the story in Transylvania, here's all the superstitions and here's what they are. How to kill a vampire, all that stuff. It's what she provided him. Now, Bram never went there, but luckily enough, people like Gerard, Charles Bonner, Andrew Cross, Elizabeth Mattucelli, all these adventurers went to these countries, or this region, Transylvania, Wallachia, Moldavia, Bukovina, and wrote about it, about the customs, traditions, the mountainside, which gave a detail-oriented guy like Bram all the material he needed to set his story with real superstitions, real geography, exactly the info on the different types of gypsies and so on to make the story seem real.
That's amazing. I mean, I personally feel that if you have a little bit of real history in a fiction book, it makes it's almost like you fell into the story. I have a friend who wrote a book. I can't remember what it's called now. He's written a couple of books. Actually, it's Michelle's other half, Wayne Mallows, and it's about vampires. He actually added the legend, or not the legend, but the story of Jack the Ripper. He actually has correct addresses. Like he dove deep into his research. Like he actually has actual towns, So to me, that as a reader, it just helps me fall into the story that much easier.
And that's what got me going when I started really getting into reading in college, when I had some free time, in between sporting training, with Ken Follett. So Ken Follett's a writer, a British writer, does exactly the same thing as Mr. Mallows, and that is put you in a place where you think is real, and then the story that evolves kind of like pulls you along, and you're like sucked right in, which is absolutely wonderful. I love that feeling.
Yep. I'd like to quickly, because we only have a couple of minutes, but I'd love to hear about your experience at the Haunted Library in Dublin, Ireland.
Ooh. So Marsh's Library, guys, actually, people say it's haunted. So Archbishop Marsh, that started the whole thing, and I can't remember what year, 15 something, it's like really old, had a daughter that disobeyed him, because, back in those days, you were told who you were going to marry, right?
Yeah.
So she went and married somebody else, and the father got really upset and punished her in a way that she didn't forget. So apparently she haunts Marsh's Library. So what happened to me? So I was there, and I go there often to do some presentations. It's such a cool library. It has the books, kind of like you've got behind me, but in cages. So you got bookshelf, but it's in a cage, because back in those days, books were so expensive. You had to, number one, walk in, tell the librarian or the keeper of the books what book you wanted. Mr. Stoker, it's in cage number 5. Go down there, they find it, and you have to stay in the cage. You can't walk out with it. So books, somebody stealing a book, that's a lot, because they were so expensive. So long story short, you go past the cages, downstairs, spiral staircase, into the basement. And they have one of those long corridors going through different rooms where the lights come on when you walk through, motion detecting lights, because Europeans are very efficient that way. And so I was told, go down there, you got to go through 3 rooms and a hall, and you get into the room and start setting your laptop up in there for your presentation. That's going to start in about 20 minutes. So I went off on my own. I'd been there before with other folks, but never on my own. So I go down, and the first light comes on, and then it goes off. Okay, geez. So I had to open up my phone to try to get the little flashlight to help me get through, because there's all kinds of weird angles. So I get to the next one, and again, the light goes on, but it goes immediately off. And it's never done that before. Normally it stays on for about 2 minutes, and you get through the next one. So I get into the final room, and I set up, and that light does come on. But when I plug my computer in, it's dead. Sorry, that's not true. I didn't bring my plug with me, because I just charged it up. When I opened it up to turn it on, it was dead. Wow. But 20 minutes ago in my hotel room, I had the thing totally charged.
Yeah.
And it was not running while I was getting there. It was totally off. So it's like, wait a sec.
It should have been fully charged.
Some electrical interference. And I hear that more often than not when people have some sort of paranormal experience, that electrical interference, something drains the energy. And so I sat in there going, okay, just take it easy. This too shall pass. And I had my phone still with me, but the little battery was going down. I go, what the heck? Is it because I've got the flashlight on? Yeah. And I just sort of sat there, and it felt cool, cooler than normal. And I just said, okay, I'm just going to wait, because there was going to be the assistant coming anyway. I opened up the door and shoved a chair in it, so there was a little light coming from somewhere else. But because it was underground, it was the basement, there was no windows. So I just sort of had about 3 minutes of great sort of serenity and calm, but with that feeling that something else is here. It's not hurting me. That did something to the computer. The problem was, I'm about to start a show, and with a dead computer, luckily, and maybe this is the ghost of Miss Marsh, the organizer had a plug from her Mac that could plug into mine, and I could plug it in.
Nice.
And there was an adapter, because they said, we've got students all the time come from different countries, so they had an adapter.
Oh yeah.
So we were good to go.
My dad always referred to the adapter as wall warts, and that's what my husband, kids, and I refer to them now. So if we say a wall wart, somebody's like, a what? It's like, oh, sorry, an adapter.
I hadn't heard that one, but I have a collection for, England, Scotland, Ireland, Romania. Usually there's two different ones I can get away with, but then you also need the ones to your computer if you're doing a different one for different projectors and so on. So I travel with a nice little collection of those things.
Nice. Well, we are at the end. I really appreciate your time. Could you tell us quickly about your tours to Transylvania, when they're going to be?
Yeah. So look, there's actually one coming up this coming October 27th to November the 2nd. There's a 5-day tour. There's also one that goes 12 days, and this starts in Bucharest, and it travels all the way around Romania. Obviously, the 5 days doesn't go as far as the 12-day, but they both of them involve what's very cool, because the company is Mysterious Adventure Tours. You can see them online, mysterioussadventuretours.com. They are renting Bran Castle. That's the same castle that Bram used to describe his fictional castle Dracula. They rent the thing out. So we have a private party for 100 people inside the castle. Now, the next night, on the 31st, the castle has a huge big marquee tent. 500 of your favorite friends all come in there. But we've got the inside of the castle on the 30th up until 2 a.m. So we actually have, when the veil is lifted and Halloween actually starts, we'll be inside the castle, catered food, bar, dancing, awesome costumes, great photographs. So that's a wonderful fall Halloween trip with Mysterious Adventure Tours. Next May and June, with experience-transylvania.com, I run a trip where we go to Whitby, where Bram started his research on Dracula. We're there for 3 days, and then we go off to Transylvania for 5 more days. So if you need information, get a hold of Kat. She will connect you to me, and I'll give you the info, because it's as magical as you can possibly think it is. And one thing I love to do, everything I've talked about today, when we get to these places, I love reading excerpts from Dracula and from the books that Bram researched, saying he read this, and the guy that wrote it stood here, or this is where it happened. That's how freaking cool it is.
Oh man, that was so freaking cool. And like Dacre said, if you want more information, hit me up and I will get you that info.
Because you're going to come on this trip sometime, Kat. I know you
someday,
are.
Yes.
You got to get some of your paranormal friends. You guys got to come.
We're going to manifest that.
There's cool places to explore and to get the readings when you're there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so very much, Dacre. I really appreciate your time. I'm just going to say farewell to the guests, and if you have a couple minutes, we can chat after.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep.
A huge thank you to my special guest, Dacre Stoker, and to you, my wonderful haunted hearts, for tuning in. I also want to thank UPRN 107.7 New Orleans, 105.3 the Gulf Coast for carrying the show. And if you like tonight's episode, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. It truly does mean the world to me. And if you'd like to be on the show, have guest or topic ideas, or just want to say hello, drop me an email at paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'd also love to hear from what country you're listening from. So until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other. Much love to you all.